Good evening, everyone. I'm Gideon Spanier. I'm the UK Editor-in-Chief of Campaign, which is an advertising magazine. We cover the ad industry. So it was very nice that the RTS has asked me to chair this panel. And I'll introduce our speakers in a minute. And we've called the panel, truthfully, the RTS has called this panel, is AVoD the New SVoD? And as a journalist, I always think we've got a jargon bust all the time. So really we would have to spell this out as advertiser supported video on demand, the new subscription video on demand. And I think we'll try and bust a little bit of jargon tonight. There's some people who come from the TV world, some people who come from the advertising world, and as we know, sometimes the language and the jargon can obscure things, and we need to cut through a little bit. I did say to Theresa Wise from the RTS, maybe, if we were thinking about the future, is this actually the Royal VOD Society? But I think we all know what television is, and great television is great content. It's about entertainment, but it's also news. So I think today we're really here to talk about entertainment, but all of us know that there's some tremendous and incredibly difficult news journalism happening at the moment in Russia and Ukraine. So I think we should acknowledge that, even though we're here to talk about, frankly, how television can transport us to great, fun places. So let's do a quick intro for the panel. Katie Coteman, Head of Ad Sales at Discovery Inc., UK, Ireland, and International. Katie, do you want to give us 10 seconds on your brands?
I can do that. There are 15. But the key ones, our flagship channels are obviously Discovery, TLC, ID, and then our free-to-air channels, Quest Red, Really, HDTV, DMAX, and Food Network.
Good.
And obviously our SVoD service, Discovery
Right.
Plus.
And you've got new friends from Warner Media.
We have, yeah.
So we'll maybe come to that in a minute. So Dan Fahy is SVP Streaming UK for Paramount. Do you want to give us a few of your brands?
Yeah, so on the streaming side of things, we've got 3 products. We've got My5, which is the BVOD player of Channel 5 that you all know because we own Channel 5. We've got Pluto that we'll talk a bit about tonight. And we're bringing Paramount Plus to market this summer. And Paramount Plus is our big Paramount aggregation play, so it brings in Paramount Film Studio, it brings in Showtime, which is currently with Sky Atlantic, our pay brands, Nick, Comedy Central, MTV, and all the derivative brands with those like South Park and Paw Patrol and SpongeBob and things. And the rest of the portfolio of brands we have too, so CBS, Library, that sort of thing. So that's going to be our big flagship SVoD launching this summer.
Okay, great. Now, if AVoD is part of the future, then we want to hear from an advertiser. So it's great. We've got Tom Harris, who's Connections Manager, Business Unit West, which is more exciting than it might initially sound. It's the UK, Ireland, and the Canaries. So well done for getting a bit of sunshine. Tom, tell us about a few of your brands.
Yes,
oh,
sure.
sorry, for Inbev, or AB Inbev?
Yes, AB Inbev.
Yeah, so tell us some of your brands.
Yeah, so we have Budweiser, Bud Light, Stella Artois, which is the biggest beer in the UK, and we also have Camden, Corona, yeah, and quite a few seltzers recently, so the explosion of seltzers.
Okay. And Dave Castell is General Manager EMEA for Inventory and Partnerships at the Trade Desk. So Dave, briefly, the Trade Desk does what?
We're a DSP, the first acronym of the evening, which is a demand-side platform enabling all advertisers to buy programmatically across channels, so including connected TV.
Fine. And these guys, up to a point, are the supply side.
Yeah.
With the content. So the way this is going to work, we're going to run this in a couple of parts. I'm actually going to ask Dave in a minute to sort of ask him how he sees the market. Then Katie and Dan each got a little video to show on this lovely screen. And we'll get to see some of the content, which is obviously what makes all of us want to watch. And then we'll have a great discussion and bring you in to think of the questions you want to ask. And we'll aim to finish by 8 o'clock when there will be drinks. So, Dave, I'm going to hand over to you. And we talked a little bit about busting jargon. You managed to get in an extra piece of jargon. So, over to you.
Thank you. Got the famous clicker, so that's good. We're all set up. So, as we've been saying, so good evening, everybody, or good evening again, and essentially welcome again to the Royal Television Society on all things acronym focused, including connected TV, AVoD, SVoD, and I'm sure we'll try and bust some acronyms and demystify some things tonight as well. So we're going to try and address everything that we can on some of the sort of hot topics, hot questions on this topic. At least it wasn't me spilling the drink this time. So, I guess before we sort of start, I wanted to kind of unpack some of the, really on some of the kind of bigger themes for the evening and weave in some of the definitions that we have and that we see in the market, and as I say, demystify some of the background for you all. This was the sort of the brief slide that I can run just on the trade desk in terms of what we do, but we're very much involved in helping advertisers to buy advertising across platforms, and we do it because things like connected TV matter. That's the strapline that we say. So I guess, setting the scene, it's fair to say that I guess, the events of the last couple of years have really sort of led us to a kind of inflection point for TV. As a result of some of the shifts in consumer behaviour, especially across the pandemic, we kind of find ourselves at a sort of crossroads at the moment. And we found in our sort of surveying over the last year or so that actually in the UK, Brits especially are watching more high-quality video on demand than ever before. And actually that research last year that we did showed about 1 in 5 now spend over 16 hours, or the equivalent of 2 working days, watching streamed TV content. So I guess the opportunity at hand is fairly enormous. But I guess at the same time, we're actually seeing something that other people have called subscription fatigue. So consumers are actually reaching a limit of how many paid subscriptions they want on the go. Again, subscription video on demand, SVoD, another acronym that we're underlining here. And we found that about half of people wouldn't spend over £10 a month on streaming services, limiting them to a grand total of kind of 1 subscription-funded streaming service. So, we've obviously got 2 streaming services on the panel tonight. So that's an interesting stat, and we probably all recognise that as consumers as well. And in fact, Deloitte, who have looked at this area as well, predict that in 2022, this year, about 150 million paid subscriptions to SVoD services may be cancelled worldwide. So that's all signs of a really competitive and maturing SVoD market. And we do a lot of work in the US, so we've definitely seen that trend kind of starting ahead of Europe, if you like, for lots of other reasons. So growth across global regions that may have sort of different sensitivities will likely require different business model innovations. A positive trend that we're seeing, though, is that Brits' appetite for ad-funded streaming services, and in that you can include AVoD, advertising-funded video on demand, or FAST channels, free ad-supported TV. Again, I'm trying to get out the acronyms as I go. That's grown in terms of in direct proportion to kind of people's hunger for content. So our research found that about 2 out of every 5 people would prefer a subsidised service, potentially offset by ads. So as advertisers, and we work with all the big advertisers around the world, we're kind of met with an ever-growing list of demands from consumers. They want great content. They want the flexibility to watch wherever and whenever they want, as we all do, but at a reasonable price. So I think that's the inflection point that we're at the moment. And understandably, the TV landscape has rapidly changed as a result of all of that. But, I mean, we would say that actually TV isn't going anywhere. In fact, it's going everywhere. And more and more people are shifting their viewing time to CTV, again another acronym, connected TV. TV's connected to the internet. And in fact, eMarketer estimated that in 2021, there were 2 billion CTV users worldwide, with UK consumers spending an average of 65 minutes watching video on demand every day. So luckily, and I guess I would say this, programmatic advertising has enabled TV advertising to work better than ever. So, we talk about targeting and incremental reach for advertisers as the top 2 reasons why advertisers are shifting budget from traditional linear advertising to CTV. So it's, if you like, it's all the reach of linear TV with the benefits that digital has offered advertising and the revolution that we've seen over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. So as these budgets shift, so too does the whole shape of the advertising industry. TV is well established to be one of, if not the most impactful advertising channel, and I definitely agree with that as a fan of TV. But as it expands and grows, what we're seeing is that TV is actually the Trojan horse of digital advertising, because it sits at the center of almost every big campaign and team, and that's still the case in most media agencies at the moment. I'm sure Tom will have a view on that, and the guys on the panel will as well. And TV ads are actually more memorable and subject to discussion than any other format, as we all know. No one necessarily remembers a banner ad that they saw a month ago, but great TV ads can absolutely stay with you forever. And more than that, they're also trusted. So Thinkbox in the UK found that 42% of UK consumers state that TV is where they're most likely to find ads that they trust. So if we're all now moving to more of a connected environment where the big screen's still being watched the most, that's a really important thought. So with the average consumer spending about 7 hours and 31 minutes each day with digital media, a joined-up omni-channel approach is key for advertising and across many of the new services that are launching, because it's not just TV that's gone digital, it's other high-impact mediums such as out-of-home, as we've got on the board there, and they can all be activated programmatically. So as an advertiser, often you're launching a campaign that can be bought across channels and connected with consumers that are in every environment. But I think, these changes actually bring sort of new complexity in many ways. That as an industry is now evolving at such a pace and scale, it's almost impossible to keep up. There's so many relatively new advertising products and channels, it can be hard to get all the acronyms straight, even for me, knowing many of them. We actually found that for about 70% of advertisers, being able to connect ad investments to measurable business outcomes is a top priority. And this is something that we often help advertisers do. So I guess, with these numbers only set to grow further and new services launching all the time, especially AVoD services or indeed HVoD services, where it's a combination of SVoD and AVoD, and there's been a couple of those kind of launching, huge ones in the recent week or so. I guess with conversations like this, we're always really interested in what progress is going to be. So I guess with that, in the month that Disney have announced that they will also be introducing globally an ad-supported tier to Disney+, and Netflix, which, personally I've been predicting for a while, publicly stated never say never to ads, which, believe me, is a shift. This is a really, truly exciting time, both for amazing premium content and also advertising that can support that, which is where we're very much coming from. So, not to end on a flourish, I guess, as Kenneth Branagh said on Sunday at the BAFTAs, paraphrasing a bit for film to TV, all hail the streaming revolution, but all hail the big screen, and in this case the TV screen. It's alive, and long may they live together. I'll hand back to Gideon.
Great, thanks. Now, I didn't plan this bit, but I'm going to try it. Would anyone here like to put up their hand if they would actually prefer an AVoD service because they wouldn't have to pay? So I will put my hand up. Just I don't know if anyone else wants to say, maybe you all want to pay subscriptions because you prefer ad-free. So yeah?
There's a few.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question because I wouldn't put it this way. They're not. I wouldn't say there's a chorus of people desperate to have an ad-funded experience, but I think that we've seen that there's a lot of freemium models that will work. So I'm going to start with Casey, just because you're on my left. Tell us a little bit about where you see AVoD in the mix, and what you do, what the opportunity is, just from your perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think, as we all know, and especially Discovery, because we have a combination of pay channels and free-to-air channels, in the UK market, it's essential that there's an AVoD offering. There are, consumers' expectation is that if I can watch this channel for free, I should be able to access that content somewhere else on catch-up or for free. So I think that it's sort of just a standard part of our ecosystem. But then, because we do have pay channels, there's also that sort of space for being able to retain a certain amount of premium content to kind of drive a different kind of revenue for us, right? So it's about a mixed economy across subscriptions and ad sales. And let's be honest, that's how us TV companies have been working for years. So it's just kind of moving the old model into the new world, basically.
And tell us, tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
You're launching, I guess, what is a new product. So tell us a little bit about that, and again, the relevance to this.
Yeah. So interestingly, because quite a few of you walked perfectly into this answer, we are launching an ad-supported tier of Discovery Plus. So we launched it in the US when we launched Discovery Plus a year ago. It works brilliantly, and so we're rolling out in the UK. There are going to be it's really clear, two propositions. You can either pay full fat and get all of our amazing entertainment and sports content for $6.99, or if you would prefer to watch a few ads, less than half of linear, you can pay $3.99 and get access to our entertainment pack. And that's because we recognise that they're at their limit when it comes to stacking of products. The Discovery product in particular is probably slightly less mass than sort of your Netflixes or your Disneys currently in its current form. We are world leaders in real life entertainment. It's quite a specific type of content, so we want to make it as easy as possible for people to put that on top of all of the other SVoD packs that they've got.
So what you describe as full fat, there are no ads.
Yeah.
And you've got a few ads. So actually, you can't call it ASVoD, but it sort of is.
Or people call it all sorts. They call it hybrid VOD.
Right.
HVOD is what it was called. Then we weren't allowed to call it that anymore internally. They kept changing the name. Claire's been there. Yeah. Then it's ad light, and then it's ad supported. But yeah, it's SVoD with a few ads for a cheaper price, basically.
And what's your hunch about how the market will split for this?
I mean, that is a very interesting question. We are taking a gamble on the fact that there's a big proportion, because we did some research, and 3/4 of our subscribers actually said that they wouldn't mind paying less for a few ads. So we are giving them what they've asked for, and we are actually converting all of our entertainment subscribers into our ad light subscriber. So I'll let you know in a few days how well that's going down.
So this could be a good time to show your video clip. So shall we ask if we can get that? We saw a little bit of sport there. Tell us a little bit about how you think about SVoD, AVoD for sport.
Yeah, so obviously we have, one of our key brands is Eurosport. We have some really incredibly kind of upmarket and inspiring or aspirational rights. So tennis, cycling, we've got the Olympics, and we kind of show every second of every, medal, as it were, when it comes to the Olympics as an example. And I think that very much sits within our SVoD product. It is, it's an acquisitions driver. We talk about content as doing two jobs really when it comes to any VOD service. You've got the kind of content that's noisy and that brings people in, it makes them prepared to pay that monthly fee, but then you need to keep them in, and from an ad sales perspective, you need to get them watching as much and as often as possible. And for that, you kind of use different content, and that's more about engagement. So, sport for us is an acquisition driver. It's a massive awareness piece. It gets people in, and then we've got all this other amazing content that keeps people in and keeps people watching. So, yeah.
So just to push on that, how much is AVoD something that you can exploit or not?
From a sport perspective, actually, we're really good at doing it. I mean, again, like all sort of hybrid pay, free-to-air broadcasters, we know all about windowing. That's, and we know how to showcase certain things in free to drive people, more towards pay. And so for a lot of our big rights, we will do a certain amount of that content so Quest, as an example, shows quite a lot of sport. We use it to support cycling, we use it to support snooker. It's highly likely it's going to have more tennis on it this year. So it's about kind of using your total ecosystem to kind of gain as much engagement and viewing as possible.
Okay, so I think that's a good way of bringing in Dan. Tell us a little bit about what Paramount's doing. We've already heard from Katie. There's little bits of everything up to a point. And you can run through the acronyms if you want. Tell us a little bit what AVoD, BVoD, SVoD.
Yeah, so we've got Pluto TV, which is our fast service, our AVoD service, launched in this market in 2018, and that was 10 years after My5 launched in 2008. So we've got two fairly substantial ad-funded services in this market, and we're obviously bringing Paramount Plus to market in the summer, and that will be an SVoD service. It won't have in this market a two-tiered model where there's a cheaper tier that's got ads but also paid. There is in the US though, we've got that model in the US, and it does a great job for us. And I think the job of that is to broaden your subscriber reach out beyond those who feel it's good value to pay for the service at the price you've got it. There are people who probably think it's good value but not at that price point. And so putting in that ad-funded tier lets you keep your ARPU levels up what they would be.
That's your revenue
Average
per user, just making sure. Yeah.
Whilst bringing in a whole band of people that are a bit more price sensitive. So that's what we've got in this market: AVoD, BVoD, SVoD.
Okay. Just on a pricing thing, I know it's not maybe the biggest issue. Clearly, different markets, you can do different things. How much you need to keep it simple? Like actually having lots of price points is actually a bit complicated.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that is, the UK is a very sophisticated TV market with lots of SVoD players and lots of terrific high-quality free VOD services. So there's lots of communications out around TV. So, that is a factor. You sort of want to be, you've got a job to do to get your story out anyway without creating, additional layers of complexity. But there comes a point, and Discovery's at that point, where you can get materially more subscribers if you go down that path. So it's a sensible thing to do at the right time.
Now, My5 is the on-demand service for Channel 5 and the Channel 5 family. So sometimes we hear people talking about linear TV just in terminal decline or near terminal decline. And by the way, that's a big challenge for advertisers because advertisers want reach. Question: Are linear TV channels in terminal decline or near it?
Well, there's no doubt that there's less viewing to linear going on today in this market. And this is something that is a bit of a conundrum for us because Channel 5's had it's having its best weeks and months ever in its history this year. Had the best Christmas in 15 years, and the first 2 months this year have seen some of the biggest viewing it's had. But you can't get away from the fact that I think now if you look at the market, there's 3 million homes, so consider it the size of the Virgin Media base, that just don't have a traditional TV connection anymore. They don't have Freeview, don't have cable, don't have satellite. And then if you look at the broader segment of maybe 10 million homes that consider themselves VOD first, and they are VOD first in their behaviour, there's just less consumption to linear. And so we think linear's, for the homes it's in, is still a very, very healthy business. But part of our big push into AVoD through Pluto and through My5 is to recognise that the homes that are on the other side of that linear, band, they still love TV. They still consume a lot of TV, and they still want a varied TV mix. And that's not going to be satisfied and isn't evidently satisfied purely by SVoD services because, they're sort of high commitment services, aren't they? It's scripted, it's original, exclusive. You've got to really engage on that.
So you've got to use your brain.
You've got to use your brain, it's true. But people sometimes want a bit of a low engagement experience, and that's where there's an opportunity for some of the ad-funded services to play into that. And so that's where we're seeing Pluto's opportunity.
You talked about these VOD first homes, right? 10 million of them. Is that right?
Yeah.
So when we see that, is that what's this kind of behaviour? Who are the kinds of people? Are they always younger? What's the kind of? Can you give us a sense of who these 10 million are?
Yeah, and AMP has done some great work profiling this base actually. But during the pandemic, you saw lots of VOD consumption happening because people had more time, but linear channels were a bit thin compared to what the usual output was, and that benefited both BVOD, catch-up services, and SVOD. But now that we've sort of come out of it, it's the BVOD's sort of gone back to where it was. Not exact, but a little bit more. But SVOD's really maintained its profile. So what we see in homes that are VOD first, they're not non-linear. They're not only VOD, but they tend to be VOD first, and they tend to be SVOD first. Actually, the consumption of those homes is overwhelmingly SVOD, not only SVOD. And so, like I said before, in those homes that are predominantly SVOD, there's a couple of things there. There's probably three things. One is there's a consumer opportunity for those homes who are less engaged or not engaged at all with linear to get something that rounds out their TV experience from a no price point of view. But there's two other opportunities. One is for content partners like us. We're investing a lot in content. Still investing a lot in content. Our investment in content goes up even as linear consumption contracts. So we've got all this content that is sort of less monetized, but there's a band of consumers out there that are still devouring content. So what we've done is crafted a vehicle that can get our content out into that segment and get our partners' content out into that segment as well. Because Pluto, as you've seen on there, it's not just a vehicle for Paramount. It's a vehicle for it's a proper third-party platform. And we've paid out more in Q4 to content partners than we ever have before. That's 200% up year on year. So we're pushing a lot of money back out into the content market. But the other thing, and Tom will probably talk to this more as well, is if you're an advertiser that's got a big brand campaign and ordinarily you got into lots of homes through TV and that base is contracting back, but suddenly you've got these vehicles that are getting back into those homes on connected TVs with big screen inventory, TV-like inventory that's brand safe, you're getting back that reach that you were missing before. So it's from our point of view, it's a good model. Actually, it's a consumer model, it's a content partner model, it's an advertiser model that we're really backing.
Okay, we're going to come to Tom in 1 minute. So for both of you, because you're just amongst friends, how worried are you by Disney Plus taking ads?
You go first, Katie.
I think it just proves that we've made the right decision. I think it's because none of us have ever been single revenue businesses before. Why did we think that was going to be why did we think that would be the only way to make money? As Dan said, the investment in content is going up and up and up, and there needs to be a return on that. And there are these different cohorts of users who are happy to engage with your content in different ways. So it's just about how you manage that mix, really, and especially because the decline in linear is particularly obvious amongst those more upmarket and younger viewers that advertisers are prepared to pay more for. But actually the differential between the price of reaching that person on TV and the price of reaching them on VOD is there isn't much difference at all. So it works.
We'll come to that in a minute because we'll find out whether but Dan, just last quick one for you.
Yeah. No, I think it's a sensible move, and it's a predictable move, as you say. I think if your question's getting it, is that a threat to our share of the ad business? Probably not, because I just observed that if they're going to take your model, it's going to be low ad load, but it's quite contained. It's going to be contained to a band of subscribers that sit around their core subscription offering. So it's not an all market. It's not a totally free all market proposition, which is what Pluto is and what My5 is. So I think it's good. a sensible move, and like I said, it's what Paramount Plus has done in the US as well.
Okay, so Tom, thanks for sitting patiently. As an advertiser, you've been hearing everyone else talk about this and sort of declining reach of linear. Could be a brilliant new way for you to reach audiences. But is it? Are you a happy advertiser right now in terms of what these partners and others are offering?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's a challenge that we're seeing declining audiences in linear TV and in traditional TV, because I think it's worth saying that TV is just such a fantastic medium for return on investment, for trust. Consumers trust brands that are on TV more than they trust any other medium that they're on. It's generally been the best return on investment for the pound spent, but things are changing. So in the last few years, cost of TV is, for some audiences, young audiences in particular, has gone up maybe 50, 60%. And it's the gap between other channels is decreasing. But really what, advertiser-funded VOD or any type of sort of fast VOD is doing, it's kind of replacing some of those viewers. It's still giving you that attentive reach in a lean-back environment where you're enjoying quality content. And that's what advertisers need. Because although you can get reach quite cheaply from, say, Facebook, Meta, social media, it's a very different type of experience. It's a scroll through, hard to pay attention, 2 or 3 second view. And that type of storytelling that you can do there is very different. And it's not the same as replacing TV in its traditional form, or even in replacing it through broadcaster VOD or advertiser-funded VOD, where you're generally maybe 1 or 2 advertisers in the reel, you've got 20 seconds, 30 seconds to tell a story, and that really does do something differently, that you can create a connection with your audience, the brand gets across in a way that can really tell a story. And yeah, I feel like we need to replace those lost views on linear TV, but the industry's responding as it always will. It's resilient, and yeah, we're seeing more of that.
And if you see in the Pluto trailer unskippable ads, is that music to your ears?
Yeah, I mean,
because it might not be for consumers, but it's only because.
But I think consumers realise that there's no such thing as a free lunch, and advertising has traditionally always paid the way for the content they're watching. And we've gone through periods in the past, like when the internet first started taking off. I don't know if you remember, but you had to pay to actually kind of review anything, and you had like free serve, where you got served advertising if you got free internet. We're just in a cycle where we're starting to see that now, in that maybe it's sustainable that you won't have advertising in a lot of these models. Maybe Netflix can continue, but if Disney Plus are not going to continue that, and the growth of people like ITV recently talking about ITVX moving to having a much more content on their video on demand, I think it just shows that advertising at the end of the day is always going to be needed to help fund the programming that's made. And people accept that, and you will sit in front of a TV and watch quality content knowing that it's brought to you from a couple of advertisers. And to sort of compare that to something like YouTube, which is probably the biggest threat really to, I would say, to the broadcasters, because it's very free, very easy to access, and there's huge amounts of it. The difference though is that even there, the amount of incessant advertising is relentless, and it's not viewed in the same way. And that's why there is such an importance to their unskippable format, because there is only so much attention you can give to advertising. But I think there's a slightly different mindset with a TV broadcaster that's moved into advertiser-funded, that these guys are quality, I'm watching the program I want to watch, I'm enjoying this, I'm relaxed, and I'm willing to watch an advertising to fund it.
Okay, very interesting. So we're going to come to Dave in a second. When we talk about the power of internet-connected TV, as an advertiser, what's it doing for you? Because obviously we know that YouTube and Facebook and others have grown a huge amount by offering tremendous targeting. Not necessarily tremendously good, but as in good for the world, but it's in tremendous. So how much is, whether it's AVoD or BVoD, how much is that targeting really helping you yet?
Yeah, so far, I would say I personally still see all of these avenues in advertiser VOD as primarily reach-driving channels. And they're replacing, or they're doing a job on the media plan that is broadcast reach, an attentive reach.
Getting a big audience,
Getting a big audience who are watching things in an attentive manner that they're not elsewhere. So just because the availability and the potential to target really niche is there, doesn't mean it's going to be taken up. And we saw that in the industry over many years, where we've had the option to buy really niche targeting on TV through Sky, through their set-top boxes, and you pay a big premium to buy really niche audiences, you pay a slightly smaller premium to buy slightly broader audiences. And it has its place, but I don't think it replaces TV as we know it. I don't think it's the new way of buying advertising, because a lot of advertising theory recently has been focusing on the idea of you want to get as many people to see your advertising as possible, because you don't know who your true audience is. You need to demonstrate penetration of your brand, and your brand almost will find, people will find your brand. You know, you will find that if you increase the number of people that are available to be exposed to your product, then hopefully that will be more effective than us continually chopping down to smaller and smaller groups, paying a big premium to do so. We might be making a mistake if we're saying that's our audience.
Okay, so, Dave, you agree? Feel free to disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been brilliant hearing the perspectives, actually, because I guess as a former content person as well, I've kind of mentally got a foot in both camps as well here. I think where it starts to get really interesting and exciting is actually, to Tom's point, I think is the variety that it creates in the ad buying experience. So I think now we're at a stage where we've got a kind of cohort of both digital and traditional brands, as well as traditional and digital broadcasters or content providers, and equally a group of kind of digitally savvy talent, if you like, coming through in basically the big media agencies and the brand side. So what that creates is the opportunity for kind of digital first brands to buy in a very specific way to certain platforms and drive things like performance, so which is kind of countering slightly what you're saying. Rather than just the brand building side, actually you can now buy in at the right cost, at the right moment, at the right time, which is really the dream of programmatic advertising economically. That's what programmatic is trying to do. It's trying to, auction the best impression to an advertiser to be served to the right consumer at the right time on the right channel. And then everyone benefits from that. That's the theory of it. That's the economic theory. So it creates new opportunities for kind of new brands that are coming through. And we've certainly seen that the last year. I think we've got record amount of new brands globally on the platform. I think it's up to about 15,000 brands now advertised on CTV over the last year, and double the amount of brands spending more than $1 million on CTV globally. So that shift from kind of advertising, the big kind of total addressable market of advertising in TV, into digital and into programmatic, for the brands that want to drill right down without, and I agree with you all here, without losing the benefit of that broad brand reach story that TV still provides, and I believe will continue to provide in linear markets as well. Because, let's remember, it's a lot of the world still is connected by an aerial to TV still, but that poses a challenge and an opportunity, because probably the next billion people coming online are going to be from developing markets, who, bringing us back to AVoD, may not be able to pay a subscription, and be experiencing something mobile first. They're more likely to take an ad-funded service to get the kind of content that they're used to elsewhere. For example, the World Cup.
So it's interesting, right, for both of you, how much of your AVoD type services are bringing in new advertisers and making it easy for them? So it could be just because these are brands that are used to buying on Google and Facebook, self-serve. Are you getting new advertisers? Is that actually a reality for you yet?
I mean, we're still very early days, obviously, but I think we are out in market talking quite extensively about the fact that our inventory is available fully programmatically, which a lot of broadcasters aren't, or the big broadcasters aren't necessarily doing. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It is about, the right ad at the right price, But actually also what we think is, it's about user experience. So, one of the big barriers to trust in our industry at the moment is bombardment, so people seeing the same ad too many times. And so what we really, see as a benefit of programmatic is that will make sure that we have a good diversity of ads on the service. So people watching, and especially because, we hope they're going to be watching for long periods of time, because once they're in, they're kind of in, and it's so easy to keep watching. They're not going to be just seeing the same few ads. And, a lot of our services, even the biggest ones, still don't have that same reach as linear TV. And so programmatic also enables brands to kind of put together an overarching campaign that reaches a lot of people, but by accessing lots and lots of different platforms. Because if you're only directly interacting with each of those platforms, the risk is, it's quite small amounts of money. You might end up with people seeing your brand. So there are lots of advantages, we think, to programmatic from an ad-supported VOD, whether it be AVoD, BVOD, FAST, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, we ask, so our Pluto monetization model has two halves to it, really. There's Sky Media, sort of is our ad sales house in this market across our business, and they represent Pluto as well. But then we also plug in a number of programmatic partners into the mix as well, and they do bring in brands, agencies, etc., that we wouldn't be connecting with through Sky Media. So there's definitely opportunities through those different partners to connect to new advertisers and bring in a new way. And the benefit for those advertisers is they do get a TV-like ad buy. When it said unskippable up there, it's because it's a linear experience. We've got 8 to 10 minutes of ads per hour, but if you join a channel on Pluto just after the ad break, you're going to have a long period of uninterrupted viewing without any ads until you get to the next one. So it's just very much as unintrusive as advertising can get in these digital platforms.
Okay, I'm going to just, I know it's a cheeky thing, but just for the benefit of the audience, can you describe programmatic in 12 seconds? Just so they know.
Dave's the guy to ask that.
Happy to try if you want. I mean, essentially, it's automated buying of advertising digitally. So you as an advertiser, and back me up here, Tom, you're using a platform, whether it's, and Google have their own platform, Xandr or AT&T have their own platform, The Trade Desk. There are many DSPs that are out there. As an advertiser, you're logging into that platform and you're assigning an amount of budget, which, and I kid you not, in a hundredth of a second, scans basically the entire open internet and auctions, wins a bid for an auction for that advert to appear in front of you as a consumer. So it's quite a mind-bogglingly brilliant piece of technological kind of advancement, and that, in a way, I think is one of the challenges of this moment in time, is the fact that the advancement's moving so quickly, and almost all sides of the industry need to keep up in one sense to kind of buy into the great content that Dan and Katie are providing.
Okay, I think it was more than 12 seconds, but well done. Sorry for doing your best. I mean, it's matching the advertiser with the inventory in real time. And are you happy, Tom? Again, I'm coming back to you with what you hear, because I mean, you've touched on it yourself. People know, in a world of declining linear audiences, inflation goes up, right? Now, you might think that BVOD or AVOD is cheap, but it isn't always, is it? So tell us a little bit about how much is a good deal for you.
Yeah, so it's actually been a premium versus TV traditionally for a few years.
You have to pay more.
Yeah, so it's generally a higher cost per thousand, so the cost to reach 1,000 people is the way we measure it. It's had a higher cost per thousand than traditional standard kind of general TV mix for a while. But one of the things that's changing is with that decline of TV viewing and the interest to maintain the yields of those companies, that we're seeing that gap become smaller. And to the points made earlier, I totally agree that for smaller advertisers as well, or for certain brands with maybe a particular audience, it makes perfect sense, as you said, to have a niche audience that primarily starts with a experience that might be programmatic, it might be video on demand, just in order to reach a specific proportion of the population in a way that you're willing to pay a higher cost per thousand to do so.
Now, when you hear about these AVoD services, have they reached a critical mass for you where, and what would, if, clearly there's growth, these guys are all pushing further expansion. Is there going to be a tipping point? Is it just more people having connected TVs?
Yeah, I think so in simple terms, and also, you know, seeing that the audiences, I mean, you look at 1634 consumption of TV or AV now, and that's kind of an indication of where it's going, and it's now about only 55% of their viewing is traditional, linear or whatever you might call it. There's a huge amount now that's on demand that is either subscription VOD or is advertiser-funded VOD or other forms of video like YouTube, etc. So, I mean, that's only going to continue to happen. They're going to continue to inflate the price of audiences of traditional TV, and we're going to need more and more places to view advertising in a safe environment, in a quality environment that you get from the broadcasters we're talking about. So advertiser-funded VOD, where if the experience can replicate the best of subscription VOD, then why wouldn't you go to an advertising platform to watch your content if it's the content you want to see? It's not a barrier. It's still your content. It's a small amount of price to pay in terms of advertising and time spent for quality stuff. So, you know, I think the continuation of the shift to AVOD is a good thing for advertisers, good thing for consumers' wallets. And yeah, if it still means we get to see the best, you know, content that we expect to see, then it's a win-win.
Okay, so it sounds like a marvellous world we're coming to, maybe. So if you've got questions, I believe there's some roving mics. So I can see a question here, but I've got a question first. I mean, where's this market going? Is it going to have to consolidate further? Because it feels like there's an awful lot of platforms out there, and we've heard whether it's subscription fatigue or just general platform fatigue. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying I have so many logins and different passwords, and it drives me insane. Sorry, I'm sure most people feel the same. So,
I think there's a number of challenges, definitely, and I think it's some amazingly brilliant strategic work is going on the content planning side, and I applaud you both and your companies for kind of doing that. The same with all the different, you know, main, if you like, the PSBs in the UK. So we deal obviously with Channel 4 and Sky, and ITV have just, of course, launched their own announcement about ad-funded as well in the context of what they're doing. So I think it's a really interesting time for content planning and licensing in that sense. And I think, Dan, am I right in saying that you guys kind of pulled Star Trek from Netflix at one point, which I thought was a genius move into Pluto, is that right?
Yeah, it's still premiering on Pluto. Yeah, it did come off Netflix. Yeah.
So that is a really interesting move, I think, in the context of kind of UK fast or UK AVOD, that a premium show like that, which has got a discrete investment, is now being aired on Pluto, which is a great sign for kind of premium content against AVOD. But I think there's also a kind of a UX challenge for the viewer as well. Because, you know, in the same way that, you know, an advertiser should be able to buy and control frequency and reach and have all the kind of dream of digital moving into TV, which is kind of on everyone to make those investments technologically, the viewer also needs to have the right experience. So I think, you know, it's getting the balance of both of those things kind of right in the mix. And just the final point was kind of, if we look at the US, and we've been working a lot on kind of CTV in the US for a number of years, which has been our biggest kind of growth channel, there's definitely consolidation happening, and there's definitely more investment going into that area, but offset by the fact there are new budgets arriving into connected TV that weren't there before. So, for example, we've had brands in APAC and in China buying into the European TV market, which again is a new category of brands that didn't exist before.
These are advertisers who want to...
These are advertisers, yeah, who are looking at kind of buying Europe or buying UK for kind of, you know, data-led, frequency-capped kind of ad buys, which again is a new market. And those are, you know, huge brands rather than just sort of smaller brands, if you like, digital first.
I think it's interesting as well what might happen, or what is happening first maybe, rather than us as content creators aggregating, is that the old aggregators are just doing it in a different way. So Sky is a prime example with Glass of, we will have our content on there in our apps. It doesn't necessarily sit on Sky Glass in the same as it used to, but the technology will enable users to not have to think about going in and out of apps. They will just have to ask for the content that they want to view, and the aggregator will make sure that it services that to them. So I think at the moment, and BT is the same thing. It's about they're working with all their partners who have more ownership of their content than they used to have maybe. But it's about facilitating. It's still about delivering value to consumers by making the viewing experience easier. So I suppose maybe that's where the aggregation is coming from rather than us at the moment. But who knows?
Sorry, just to say, I think it's basically consumer first. If you think about it from the point of view of the average viewer, as you've said there, you want to be able to find the content you want. And so as long as the technology and the ability of the broadcaster and the sort of the TV that you're watching allows you to be able to find your content, that's how it will work. And I don't think we have the capacity to go into 5 or 6 apps to find the content. It needs to be quick, it needs to be easy. And that's exactly as Katie just described, yeah.
Okay, so we've got a question, I think, here. And will you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, it's Matt Deegan from Folder Media. Kind of question for Katie and Dan. For sort of mid-market sort of SVoD streaming operators, so around the $6.99 mark, you've got a product there. Do you make more money from having a $3.99 subscriber taking ads or having a $6.99 SVoD subscriber? Which is better for a media company?
I mean, I think we've been quite open in the US in saying that our ad-light subscribers are more valuable to us. Yeah. I mean, and I think that is the case. And Peacock have been open about that as well. So I think it's recognised that is. But not everyone wants it. So it's not the only. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. You can't just have an ad-light SVoD service because lots and lots of people couldn't think of anything worse than watching an ad, right? So it's about having that choice. It's all about choice.
Is there a price point where that stops being the case?
I think it's too early to say, actually. I think none of us have been in the ad-light game for long enough to know how much we could be driving from the ad sales element, because that is something that we're all still. It's so complicated. This is my favourite thing that I keep banging on about at the moment. It's really hard work to have an ad-supported service, to get to all the integrations you have to do from a programmatic perspective, measurement, your CMS, how you're tagging stuff. It's an absolute bloody nightmare. So it's not easy to do, and we're definitely not at the stage where we're all going, we've got this monetisation thing down. We're totally rinsing that. So there's definitely growth once we kind of, it gets better.
And as Katie said earlier, it's much less predictable too, because when you've got an SVoD tier, you get that each month and you can sort of bank on that. But whereas you're getting an ad-funded piece, you've got to keep that viewer coming back in. So you've got this engagement dynamic that you don't necessarily have in an SVoD model. So and advertising cyclical. So you've got all these other variable pieces in the ad-funded tier that mean it's hard to sort of, it's hard to see how they level up.
Yeah, do you want to you got the mic? Good.
Hi, Natalie Lethbridge. I'm conscious of the complexity here, and you talk about connected TVs as being a huge opportunity. One of the issues in the aggregation play is consistency and measurability. Where do you see that playing out in the next 3 to 5 years? Because of course, if that changes and you've managed to get some consistent measurements in terms of your capacity for buying and selling ads, there's a huge opportunity for growth, obviously, and then CTVs become the marketplace for TV and content. Any thoughts on that?
I think, Tom, what are your thoughts on things like Seaflight and Project Origin, which are 2 of the big projects in the UK that are trying to sort out cross-platform measurement that would help? I mean, what are your thoughts? Doing your job, sorry.
It's good, it's perfect.
Just the very top line level, I would say, we need to have a consistent way of measuring. Otherwise, what are we measuring? But it's always been lagging behind. The want's always there before the ability to do it. So, but the way that we're doing it at the moment, through a lot of the activity we've run is with fairly standard media metrics of viewership or cost per viewing. And I would say, from an advertiser perspective, not too bothered about the kind of where it is necessarily if you're just buying reach. But if you're buying quality and context, then You can imagine the conversations when you have a media plan in front of you and someone says, where are we? Are we on ITV or are we on Channel 4? And you say, no, we're on, this channel they've never heard of, never watched and didn't know existed. That's a very different way of sort of, there's measurement, there's numbers, and then there's the context of brand building. And there's still a real premium attached to being with the right channels, the right content, on the right station. So, yeah.
I'd just add to that, and violently agree for one thing, but also I think there's arguably as much innovation, probably the most amount of innovation at the moment, and investment going into cross-platform measurement and the services that are coming. If you look at all the kind of M&A money where that's going at the moment, it tends to be going towards those services, especially in the US, that are kind of making sense of this incredibly complex, multilingual kind of translation job between one, whether it's Barb on the one hand going into kind of digital, or it's the equivalent in the US as well. But I mean, there are some really good partners trying to do that and making sense of the worlds, like TV Squared, I think, are kind of out there doing some interesting stuff. Nielsen obviously have had a few announcements recently that they're, at least committing to that idea. But again, it's part of the complexity that I guess it's hopefully our job to try and make sense of, that we kind of need to overcome, and let alone when you get to the kind of commercial trading deal side of things in the UK, not to open up another can of worms, but it gets really complicated that actually you want, as a buyer and as a media agency, you want that to be counting towards your trading deal. So we've worked very closely with the likes of Channel 4 and Sky to kind of make that possible, that those two worlds can come together. But again, it's being a translator in a fast-changing industry, which is, half of the fun, really.
Now, there may be some more questions, so, yeah.
You talked about exploiting the ecosystem, and you talked about curated programming and the importance of the aggregator. I wonder if the move from SVoD to AVoD is going to make us focus more on the whole idea of discovering content. The whole idea, because strategically a couple of years ago, that was going to be the big thing. How do people actually find content, as opposed to how do brand makers find audiences? And it seems that a lot of the SVoD services at the moment, they basically put up a search function and that's it. And Amazon does a quick, if you like this, you might like. But this whole area of how do you discover, I think with AVoD, I would have thought it's going to become much more important, because the brands are going to want to have people discover content that will then mean they watch their brands. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the discovery and the user experience is a big challenge for anyone who's in this space, whether you're a BVOD player, whether you're an SVOD, or whether you're in the FAST environment. So, and I think it goes back to the question, for me, it goes back to the question of consolidation before, in that there's sort of a minimum, the minimum scale you need to be a successful player here just keeps going up year upon year. And your scale that you need also gives you the ability to properly sort of profile your audience and serve things that are relevant to them. So the more you can do that, and the more you can draw in on a broad base of usage and consumption, the better you get at that if you use the tech correctly. So, but I think you're right. It's definitely an area that needs sort of more innovation around it. But I don't think it's uniquely AVoD thing necessarily. I think it affects all those models.
Yeah. Oh, and actually, and the thing about players is we have these amazing merchandisers who come up with fantastically creative ways of trying to surface different content to different people by identifying different reasons why you would engage with that content, and so all the insight that we use to help target from an advertiser perspective, we're using it equally to try and help serve better content to people so that they are likely to stay on the platform for longer. It's the guys do some really interesting stuff. It's really clever.
It does feel like a whole of the market. I was going to say, for something that's like a meta platform that goes, not meta as in meta, in the traditional meaning of meta, that kind of looks across. And there's a brand called Just Watch. I don't know if you've heard of those guys. It kind of looks across all the kind of, I believe is SVOD as well, but it may just be AVoD, which again, is answering that question, which is kind of as a consumer, I want to watch season 1 of, Star Trek, for example, on one service, where am I going to find it? And actually, I think that's slightly broken at the moment. And obviously Sky, your point, Katie, earlier around Sky kind of becoming the Uber aggregator, are trying to win that battle at the moment and make their UI and their search function, rather them than Google, by the way, because Google still aren't in this game, which is really fascinating. Amazon maybe. They're trying to win that, and equally, OEMs like Samsung, right, and LG, and kind of, what's going to be your first experience unplugging that new smart TV? I don't know. Have you done that as a consumer? How are you finding it?
Well, I think it is a problem. I mean, I think it's there's a whole load of which come from the traditional linear world of newspaper reviews, film reviews that you can use to find things, and there's word of mouth. The old sort of water cooler moment where you talk to somebody and somebody says, "Well, what about this?" But I don't think at the moment, as you've said, it's really been addressed properly. I mean, I think there's a whole area there of just enabling people to find things that just really hasn't been touched.
Yeah, although actually as a head of ad sales, I have to say it's a joy to see that the content creators are now spending money on advertising again, because we didn't for a long time, right? Because you couldn't directly prove that ad on that channel made people watch your linear broadcast, whereas now we absolutely know which ad has driven someone to subscribe to Discovery Plus and what program they've come in to watch. And so it means it's much easier to justify marketing spend in this world, which, as someone who makes money out of ad sales, is great.
Okay, so we're very nearly out of time. I had two quick things to finish. Unless anyone's got desperately, they've really got a question they want to ask, you can. You touched on this earlier, I think. So there's been bombardment and people saying I don't like ads, and there was one time there's all this stuff about ad blocking. Is AVoD going to create a better advertising experience? And a lot of people talk about maybe more relevant ads, but do people want highly targeted, tailored, personalised ads? Is this a reality already? Do you see genuinely brands having the time and patience to kind of cut multiple different types of ad? And maybe, Tom, is it something that appeals to you?
Yeah, I think it appeals because I think it makes the experience better for consumers, whether they realise it or not. It's just going to give you more. As long as it's not freaky, as long as it's not calling you by your name and asking, saying, "Oh, I know you were there last Tuesday, so you're probably buying something you shouldn't have done. Maybe you should buy some more of it." But if it's really like, what we don't want is crap advertising that's not suited to us. We get more annoyed by seeing an advertising that's not relevant than we do about seeing something that we realise might be interesting. And so, that thing of we all think our phone's listening to us, well, it's not. It's because you're doing loads of other little bits of your behaviour, are laying little seeds for advertisers to pick up on and realise, oh, right, they're interested in this, they're interested in that. They're at this part of the buying cycle on a car, they're researching. This is the stage for them now. So I think it's only a good thing to be more and more relevant and to tailor the experience more, and it makes you more likely to buy and more likely to be a good sort of consumer to the advertiser as well, to be honest.
Okay. So my last thing I wanted to know was, imagine we're here in 5 years' time, and who would like to give a view about where the balance is between AVoD and SVoD? How much is linear still around and matters? I'm thinking change happens quite fast, especially at the moment. Would anyone like to give a punt at where we're going to be 5 years from now on current trends?
Crikey.
I've seen some figures, right, from the expectation of viewership, the expectation of pricing, and it is much quicker than people thought it would be in 2019. And that's, they thought that something that would take until maybe 2 years' time has already happened. The pandemic has changed behaviour, though, and people slightly went back to watching linear TV as much as they also started watching more VOD. So I think it's going to be rapid, and there's going to be a big shift. And I think there will be a lot of viewing on subscription VOD versus linear. But those guys are not the big linear TV channels aren't going to lie down and let that happen without doing something about it. And the discussions we've been having about ITVX, which launches at the end of this year, give me hope that we're looking for solutions to that as an industry, to find ways to put advertising in front of people and put programming in front of people to stop them from buying into subscription models and to stay there and not leave that ecosystem. Because if they don't leave that ecosystem, that is a worry, that is dangerous, that is less eyeballs on advertising, and that has a big effect on the industry. So I think there's going to be, we're slightly slow and we're slightly behind the game in terms of subscriber VOD being, out there first and having a dominant market position. But signs for me are ITVX, Disney Plus putting advertising back in there. So I think it's shifting gears now, and who knows where it'll be in 5 years, but it will be very different.
Wow. Go for it.
Just to add to that, a couple of things that we see is that we see our AVOD opportunity tracking with SVOD growth. We don't see them as being sort of, you push this balloon and it goes over. So all of Pluto's growth is coming out of SVOD first homes. And, we've got 5 channels, fast channels, from Channel 5 on Pluto that were the best performing channels in the months since they launched, in the same months that Channel 5 had its best My5 service as its best linear performance as well. So I think broadcasters are going to should find a way to sort of, ride all the opportunities as they come through. So it probably won't look too dissimilar, although the segments will be larger and smaller, but the mix will probably still be, will be there.
It'd be great it'd be great for AVOD to have its kind of Breaking Bad moment. If you think what happened with Netflix and the content side, for that to happen and for it to become completely mainstream, being optimistic.
Well, I think when you think about what the consumption of a show like Love Island is, you see the habits, right? And this is there are certain shows which are dry.
It's a sin on all huge numbers,
So I do think, the last thing I would say is coming from an advertising magazine is £5 billion a year plus gets spent on TV advertising, and people like Tom, brands have to reach those audiences, and that's a big wall of money, and whether it's Disney Plus or perhaps Amazon, I think everyone wants that money, so the money's not going to go away.
Right.
So I think it's time for me to shut up. I'm going to say thanks to the panel and hand over to Teresa.